Hey everyone, it's Dan Simitovich and I host Deviant along with Andrew Iden, who is about to give you part 2 of the Hart family murder story. And just a reminder, if you want to see some of the stuff we're talking about in the show, like documents and pictures and such, visit our Patreon, deviantpodcast.com. It starts at free, or visit us on social at deviant.podcast on Instagram and TikTok. The show contains material that may be difficult for some listeners.
On March 24th, 2018 at 2:57 a.m., Sarah Hart picks up her phone. She starts typing out a text message.
I am so sorry. I thought I'd be able to go to work, but I'm too sick to come in.
Sarah works at the Kohl's department store in Hazel Dell, Washington. It's about 17 miles from their home in Woodland, Washington, the one she shares with Jennifer and the kids.
I may actually need to go into the doctor. I texted Nicole too. I won't be able to open the store.
For 6 hours, that text message doesn't get a response. But at 9:06 that morning, a Friday, her coworker responds.
Angel got the store open. I'll go in early so she can leave.
And then an hour later, her coworker sends another message.
Do you want us to cover tomorrow too?
That message goes unanswered, and 8 hours after that, her coworker tries again.
Hey, so if I don't hear from you telling me you're coming in on Sunday morning, I'll just plan on being here to open.
And then finally, on Sunday, more than 2 full days after Sarah's first message, her coworkers try one more time, this time with a more desperate tone.
Are you okay? Please let someone know. We're all freaking out here.
Call 1 on Monday, March 26, 2018 at 1:12 p.m.
Thanks for holding. Can I help you?
Yes, I was calling to see if I can get a welfare check done.
And your name?
Cheryl Hart.
And who are we checking on?
Sarah Hart. You do have the same last name, but we're not related.
Tell me the reason that we're checking on her again.
She sent out a text message at 3 o'clock in the morning on Saturday morning stating that she was sick, but nobody's been able to get a hold of her, talk to her, or seen her since that text message, or her wife, which is Jen. So we're just concerned.
Okay, and did she say, when she said she was sick, did she say what was going on, or?
She just said that she just is unable to come out and wasn't able to go to work and thought she was going to have to go to the doctor. I checked the hospital, so they didn't have any record of her, and I think her phone is now dead, and they have 6 children.
Any known medical history that we should be aware of, or?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay.
I mean, she has been sick.
Okay, has she been suicidal at all, or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, I'll give the message to the deputy and have him contact her, okay? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
No known medical history according to the coworker, and no suicidal indicators. But by the time that call is made for the welfare check in Washington, 600 miles away, the Hart family's gold Chevrolet Yukon is upside down on the rocky shores of the Pacific. And for a full 2 more hours, it goes unseen. We're all wired differently. Some of us are wired for good, some of us are wired for bad. But a select few step outside all of society's boundaries. From Cold Open Media, this is Deviant, the Hart Family Homicides, Part 2. Welcome back to Deviant, where we chase the truth into the dark corners of what people are capable of. I'm Andrew Iden. When the phone call you just heard is made, the circle of friends that Jen and Sarah Hart have in Woodland, Washington, is looking for any sort of indicator of where the 2 moms may have gone with their 6 kids. It isn't like Sarah to skip work on short notice. She's the house's only income stream. And based on how much she communicates via cell phone, going dark for hours at a time is out of character too. But what Sarah's coworkers obviously don't realize at the time is that Jen and Sarah have packed up their family, starting the trip that ends at the Wan Creek turnout. The absence of skid marks and any real sign of an attempt to slow down at that turnout gives Sheriff Tom Allman the notion that this crash is intentional. And he knows the magnitude of making that kind of a declaration.
You can't unring that bell once you say this appears to be an intentional act. I mean, you're looking at litigation. What if the whole thing was an accident and the sheriff had come out on day 4 and said, this looks like an intentional act. I mean, there's lawyers who would line up for that one to say, oh my gosh, you made our family look very, very bad. And so you approach this with as much caution as you can, but still facts are facts. And when you say something like, this was intentional instead of criminal, if you said that without any facts, people would say, you're just blowing smoke.
Here's Shannon Barney, lieutenant with the Mendocino County Sheriff's Office.
We were hopeful that we could find a video of all of them together so that we could establish they were together. Because up until now, we still don't know that they're all together. We have 5 deceased persons at the scene, but we have the 3 outstanding kids. We're getting a lot of pressure, putting a lot of pressure on ourselves.
Less than a month later, Sarah Hart's remains are found in the waters of the Pacific, not far from the turnout. And it's nearly 2 months later when a shoe is found, with the remains of a foot inside, in the water about a mile from the crash site. And it belongs to Hannah Hart. As we mentioned in our last episode, Devante Hart's remains have still never been found. And for nearly a year, Sheriff Allman doesn't sign the death certificates for the 6 children or Jennifer and Sarah. In addition to being sheriff, Allman is also the county coroner, and he opts for a rarity in Mendocino County, a coroner's inquest.
The coroner's inquest is where you as a coroner can call together a jury of 12 people, 12 regular jurors that you would use, citizen jurors that you would use for a criminal case or a civil case. And you would assemble them and you would present the facts to them and let them make a determination. Because with any death, there's 2 questions that are answered with a completed death certificate: the cause of death and manner of death. Our death certificates for these 8 members of the Hart family, we hadn't signed them yet, and we had got the blood work back from all the ones that we, like, of course, without Devante. But what's the cause of death? What's the manner of death? Because we believed it was the 6 victims of a homicide, and the 2 moms would be suicide. And I did not want 50 years from now history to say, oh, look how tragic, 8 people died in a car wreck in Westport, and move on. The 6 children were victims of a homicide. There's no question in my mind. This was a situation where everybody was dead and there was going to be no criminal case. That meant all the information we had, all this information was going to go into a box and end up being digitized, and it would just go into the forever file and never to be exposed to the public. But with a coroner's inquest, it changes everything because all of this information becomes public information at that point.
On April 3rd, 2019, a jury is seated and the Hart investigation is laid out for everyone to see.
We are on the record in the matter of the deaths of Jennifer Hart, Sarah Hart, Marcus Hart, Jeremiah Hart, Abigail Hart, Sierra Hart, Hannah Hart, and Devante Hart.
This is hearing officer Matthew Guichard. He serves as sort of an administrator of the inquest. What that inquest describes in detail is that same 48-hour period prior to the crash that Sarah had gone quiet to her coworkers. Sarah sent those coworkers the text message on the 24th. On the 25th, her coworker calls for the welfare check in Washington, and at some point on March 25th, the day before the crash is called in, someone powers down the GPS unit inside the Yukon. They switch it off, they go dark, until they surface again in, of all places, a Safeway grocery store.
The California Highway Patrol officers actually covered a Safeway rewards card from the vehicle.
That's Detective Adam Beck. He's with the Clark County Sheriff's Office, and he's testifying at the coroner's inquest.
And we were able, one of the detectives, Detective Mitchen, in our unit was able to contact Safeway, who was able to track that rewards number to find video of a female that we believe to be seen purchasing some food at a Safeway in Fort Bragg.
In that Safeway video, the camera is angled down at the checkout line where Jennifer puts her groceries on the belt. There's some bananas, a couple loaves of bread, and a bottle of Benadryl.
The moms had bought bananas and quite a bit of Benadryl, and then something very strange. They had used their Safeway club card, their discount card, to collect points towards cheaper gas or whatever. And still to this day, I shake my head over that one, because if they had in their mind that they were going to commit this atrocious crime, why would you care about saving 10 cents a gallon on gas, in the future? But for whatever reason, they use their club card, and it allowed us much easier access to track what they had purchased. And the Benadryl was that was very, very significant.
The significance of that Benadryl becomes evident once detectives pair it with what they pull from Sarah Hart's cell phone. Here's Shannon Barney again.
They recovered her cell phone at the scene, and then I believe it was downloaded by their technicians, or it could have been the FBI technicians. They have very skilled people that do these kind of downloads, especially if they're contaminated water or something like that. But on the way down through Oregon, they started to get Google internet searches popping up on Sarah's phone, and some of those, I don't know exactly what they said, verbatim, but one of them was like, will 500 milligrams of Benadryl kill a 120-pound woman? Is death by drowning relatively painless? How long does it take to die from hypothermia while drowning in a car?
And later, when the blood results came out, we certainly realized that for one reason or another, all of them had excessive levels of Benadryl in their system.
The levels in their systems range from 400 to 1,000 nanograms per milliliter. In normal language, way more than is necessary. Jennifer's system has no sign of Benadryl, but her toxicology report indicates a BAC, blood alcohol content, of 0.10, and that's well beyond the legal limit. Here's Jake Slates, investigator with the California Highway Patrol, testifying at that inquest.
Jennifer never drank. Either witnesses stated that they never saw her have a drink, or they'd say occasionally they'd see her maybe have a glass of wine, but never finish that wine. It was the investigators' belief that she was drinking in order to build up her courage to do this horrible deed. But again, for somebody to never drink, to be at that level of alcohol, shows that she would have been impaired.
Jennifer behind the wheel is drunk. Sarah in the passenger seat is Googling information about toxic levels of Benadryl, death by drowning, and hypothermia, and the children given Benadryl to sleep. To try and envision what the last moments are like in that SUV is frankly nightmare fuel. And in the early days and weeks after the crash, there doesn't appear to be, at least publicly, any witnesses that have seen or heard what happened at that turnout. The 911 call that set off everything is from a pair of German tourists who have passed by, and it came hours after the crash. But it's during the coroner's inquest that we hear for the first time about the night before, a witness, and what it is that they hear.
An older couple that was camping out in the Juan Creek turnout at that point in time, and being a single older couple, they hear a vehicle come in, and when they hear that vehicle, the husband looks out to make sure that the situation is safe and that there's not going to be any issues. They see what he describes a vehicle that is similar to the Hart's vehicle, a larger vehicle, not a pickup, but not a sedan, parked near their location. He doesn't see any worries. He continues on his evening with his wife. At one point, they go to bed. He says that vehicle pulled into that turnout about 11 o'clock that night. And then once they go to bed, he's awoken by an engine revving and tires accelerating through the gravel. And he says the last thing he hears was what appeared to be, or the sound of, as he stated, a vehicle bottoming out. He exited his camper at that point. He goes out and looks around and doesn't see anything. He doesn't see any lights. He doesn't hear anything else at that point, and was kind of under the assumption that the vehicle continued into town. Since he was out of his camper, he walked around to the edge of the cliff. He said it was dark out. He wasn't able to see anything, but given his background and where he lived out of Alaska, knowing the ocean and wildlife fairly well, he stated to me that he felt like he heard somebody hollering for help. But based on his background and where he lived, he wrote it off as possibly a wildlife animal, sea otter, something, a seal, and didn't think anything of it, so he went back to bed.
It's not until a few days later, when that witness is in Eureka, California, and sees the report on the news, that he connects the dots. Here's Tim Raloff at the inquest, one of the members of the accident investigation team.
When we got this call, we didn't know what we had. We knew there was a family of 8 that had their vehicle had gone over a cliff, and we really didn't have any of the backstory on this. My thought on it when I came up with that conclusion that we have in our report that this was consistent with an intentional event, thinking about how carefully do you drive when you're at a cliff edge? How carefully do you drive when you have your whole family in the car? How often do you apply 100% throttle? I mean, there are times, maybe merge on the freeway, you hit 100% throttle, but if you're at a cliff edge, you're with your family, how often do you apply 100% throttle? Do you apply 100% throttle, pulling out? It seemed like a very unfortunate intentional event.
I understand you've reached verdicts in these matters. I have the verdicts in front of me.
The jury tasked with finding that verdict agrees, unanimously.
With respect to Abigail Hart, the finding is at the hands of another other than by accident. For Marcus Hart, the finding is at the hands of another other than by accident. For Jeremiah Hart, the finding is at the hands of another other than by accident. Deviant Hart, the finding is at the hands of another other than by accident. Sarah Hart, the finding is at the hands of another other than by accident. Hannah Hart, the finding is at the hands of another other than by accident. Sarah Hart, the finding is suicide. Jennifer Hart, the finding is suicide.
After the jury rendered their verdict, I was very much changed my mind, so to speak. It eliminated a lot of doubt on the part of the public because they were all able to watch it. They viewed the same information that I viewed through the whole thing. After this inquest, I think it was a good idea. I think the public had more faith in the outcome.
It's one of the decisions that, as sheriff, I'm extremely, extremely happy we did for the sole sake of history of those kids, of how they were killed, how they were manipulated, and the crimes that their 2 mothers committed. They made the selfish decision to take the lives of the 6 kids. And the 2 women who died, I have not lost any sleep over them. They're not my concern. They were adults. They made this decision.
The puzzle came together for me.
That's Brett Barnum. Remember, he's the police officer in the photo with Deviant.
I felt like I got the answers that I would be looking for. The nation got the answers that they were looking for. It took a little while. They were going to want to make sure they take their time, dot their I's, cross their T's correctly so that there isn't any doubt, speculation, or misinformation that's put out there. And I think they did a really good job. And they, as a whole, they gave everybody what they needed.
But do they? Jen and Sarah Hart are killers. The official paperwork and a Mendocino County jury makes that very clear. But what's still outstanding, what's needed, is the why. Why 2 mothers who have gone through the rigorous process of adopting 2 different sets of 3 siblings make the decision to do what's known as family annihilation. It's what eludes anyone who's followed this case. And like most things, to find some clue, perhaps we go back to the very beginning. 1,700 miles from the Swan Creek area of the California coast is the small town of Huron, South Dakota. Population just 14,000. It's on the eastern plains of South Dakota, site of the South Dakota State Fair, and home of what claims to be the world's largest pheasant statue. It's also the town where a young Jennifer Hart grows up. Jennifer winds up going to 2 different universities, the first Augustana, a private Lutheran college in Sioux Falls, and then in 1999, she transfers to Northern State University to study education. And it's here she meets a young Sarah Gangler. Sarah is a native of Big Stone City, South Dakota, wedged into the northeast corner of the state, just across the water from Minnesota. And with a population of about 600, Big Stone certainly isn't big and hardly seems like a city. And like Jen, Sarah is working on a degree in education. The Oregonian has some deep reporting on the Hart case and is one of the few outlets to speak with Jennifer Hart's family. Her parents divorced when she's young, and in 2018, her father Doug tells the Oregonian there'd been a falling out between he and Jennifer in 2001. And for 17 years, they haven't really spoken. But he also said in that interview that he never once has thought his daughter is capable of killing her own family, saying, quote, "I will never, ever, 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 ever believe my daughter would do such a thing." We've reached out to Jennifer's father for an interview, but haven't gotten a response. Both Jennifer and Sarah's families are very quiet in the years since the crash. The closest we can get to both of them, it seems, is people who know them after South Dakota, when Jennifer and Sarah are Jennifer and Sarah. The period when they build a life with their family that's about wanderlust and the outdoors, about love and adventure and happiness.
I thought I was looking at the happiest kids in the world that never seem to go through anything normal because they're that happy.
Next time on Deviant, we'll try getting closer to understanding who the Harts are and the very specific narrative they craft for the rest of the world.
I approached her and said, like, Jen, I just want to say, like, it's really amazing to me what you've done here. I was commending her, right? Because it's not easy to raise children, especially 6 of them, I'm sure.
And with the benefit of hindsight, explore the cracks and the conflict.
Her way of helping herself was to make herself look like she was this untouchable queen. And because it got harder and harder, her path got narrower and narrower. She had to get more devious. And then eventually it led her to some sort of break.
Until next time, thanks for listening. Deviant is executive produced by Clark Goldband, Dan Simitovich, and me, Andrew Iden. Clark is our story editor and booker. The show is written and produced by me and Dan, with original scoring by Shuvo Sir. Voice acting by Jessica Wilbanks and Emily Lear. Sales, marketing, and distribution support comes from our partners at Gemini 13. Deviant is a production of Cold Open Media.